Good evening, everyone. My name's Darren Plenty, and welcome to Lakeside Baptist Church in a live form tonight. We're here with Ben Good. Welcome, Ben.
Thanks, Des. Good to be here.
Ben's a cross-cultural worker with Global Interaction. He lives in Mozambique. He's been there since 2013. Okay. Been there for a long time. He's lives in Mozambique with his wife Sam and kids. Tonight we're going to have some questions. So if you've got any questions that you would like to ask Ben about life in Mozambique or economics, he's also really good with that.
No.
Feel free to
don't ask any questions.
Feel free to write the
economics.
questions on the underneath the video that we've got on Facebook page tonight. So Ben, just to start with, just tell us about your family. How many kids do you have, and how did you meet your wife?
Yeah, sure. First of all, it's good to be here. Lakeside is kind of where it all started for me, so it's nice to every time I come back to see the old crew and to there's a lot of good memories. So that said, my wife is Samantha. And I've got 3 kids. So Elizabeth is the oldest, she's 9. Then there's Anna, who's 7, and Finley, who just turned 4 last week, I think. So that's my family. I met my wife in Malawi.
Yep.
So I was part of a short-term program. So it was a 2-year placement, like an internship or an apprenticeship in mission.
Yep.
And so I was part of a 2-year program in Malawi. And Sam and her church came out in 2008, the beginning of 2008, for a 2-week visit.
Yep.
So a week in Mozambique with the other team, the team Mozambique at that time,
Yep.
and then a week in Malawi. And so I was there in Malawi to meet her team and to show her around, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I was on one of those teams that came around that time when you were there for your initial 2 years as well.
You were. Yep.
But we didn't get engaged. So.
No.
So you live in Mozambique. Before that, it was Malawi.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of Australians, when they think of these countries, they picture malnourished people, World Vision ad, people living in mud huts, no cars, no electricity, no mobile phones. What's your experience been like?
Yeah, my experience has been one of knocking down the perceptions or the stereotypes of Africans, of Mozambicans and Malawians. I think that it's fair to say that there are a lot of people that live in those circumstances. So, they've got no car, they do live in mud huts.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you were to talk to some people, they would say that's just part of their life and that's who they are, and they couldn't imagine life any other way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not sort of a disadvantage in some sense. That said, for me, the reality is much different. I'm living in a city. It's not quite a city that you would imagine, Perth being like. It's a little different. But population-wise, there's still about 200,000 people in the town itself, in the city itself. So it's fairly populated. But I've got friends that I sort of hang out with who do have cars, who are high-paid lawyers, who work with the government and things like that. So it's kind of, I guess you have your stereotypes, but then as you begin to know people, you go, hang on, they don't quite fit the box that I had in my mind. So I think my experience has been one of breaking down those stereotypes and actually getting to know people sort of as people.
Sure.
Seeing past the stereotypes. Yeah.
And you personally live in a house with running water and electricity and...
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Depending on what time of day it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If the bore pump's working and, if it gets clogged up with mud, then it stops.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you work in a team. You and your family are part of one team.
Yes.
And have you spoken to the rest of the team who might still be over there at the moment? How everything's going with the coronavirus, and if there's been much of an impact in that region of Africa?
Yeah, sure. Yes, I have.
Mm.
I was just in a Zoom meeting with them yesterday, in fact.
Mhm.
So, one of the beauties of technology is we are able to keep in regular contact. Yeah, look, the coronavirus is an interesting one. I think it's at the moment the only real, like in our area, the only real country with significant numbers is South Africa.
Yeah.
So South Africa is a bit of a concern for Mozambique. It's a bordering country, but somehow the numbers are substantially lower in Mozambique and even in Malawi. So as of yesterday, I think in Mozambique, which is a sizable land mass, there was about 140 people with or cases of coronavirus. In Malawi, I think there was about 70.
Okay.
The other thing is, sort of as a country, infrastructure-wise, they've just not really got the ability to manage a pandemic on a large scale. So if it was to come in a big way, they're not really in a position to sort of, be on top of it all. So they went very early. Most countries, I think, in the region went very early to lockdowns, to isolation, to educating people about hand washing, about sanitisation, all that sort of stuff to prevent. So I think hopefully what we're seeing is a prevention of corona as opposed to it just having a slow start. Yeah.
That's great. I imagine it's not very easy to just go and get your hands on a bottle of hand sanitizer in those kind of places. So
no, absolutely not.
Yeah, if it does get there, wouldn't be great.
Yeah.
So what does a typical day look like for your family?
Yeah. So we've got typical day in our minds, and then we've got reality, and sometimes they're a bit different. Partly, a day looks like, we wake up, we have breakfast, we get out of the house about 8 o'clock. Sam and the kids will go up to the schoolroom. So we've got a schoolroom in our yard. And it's just a small room, and the kids have their desks, and Sam does a homeschooling program with them. It's a program from Australia. So she does that with the kids. And usually that's sort of between 8 and 12, and sometimes the kids will go back after lunch and do a little bit more. As well, Sam will also do perhaps some language studies during the day, so that might be an hour or 2 hours with her language helper. Myself, I try and mix my days up between sort of the admin behind the scenes work that helps us stay in the country, and then also the more hands-on ministry side of things. So that will mean, if it's an admin day, I'll take my paperwork into an office and I'll maybe sit in immigration for an hour or two waiting for this process to be moved on to the next stage, or something like that, maybe going to the bank or dealing with people's wages and all that sort of stuff. A ministry day, hopefully that would mean spending some time with my language nurturer. So, still working on just communicating and understanding the culture of the Yao people, but then also perhaps it might mean looking over a passage of scripture that I'm going to use in a group, when I go and meet with a group and work through the story of, perhaps it's the birth of Jesus or something like that. So that would be in the morning, and then in the afternoon, which is really a time of social interaction in Yao society, I would be out and meeting with people, sitting down at someone's house or meeting someone in the marketplace.
Sure. And when I was there, I remember your team leader, Jono, rode his bike around everywhere. Do you get on the bicycle as well, or?
Like a little bit. I ride. So Jono had a motorbike possibly when you guys were there, and I'm riding his motorbike now.
Okay.
So I get around on a motorbike a little bit. And then walking or, catching a bike taxi or something like that you can utilise. So, we use whatever way is going to be the quickest or the easiest way at any given moment.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good time to go to a video that you've got. Just before we do that, just a reminder that if you do have any questions to ask Ben, write them on the Facebook page, and we will be able to answer them. So we'll cut to the video now.
My name is Elizabeth. I am 9 years old and I am in grade 4. I miss my cat and my dog. I like to ride my bike a lot around the yard. I like to play a lot of games and I sometimes get up to mischief. Hi, my name's Anna and I'm going to turn 8 in September. I'm in grade 2 and I miss Mozambique a lot because I have a lot of friends there. And I like Australia because I've made new friends everywhere, at school, neighbours, and even when we're driving. My name is Finley. I'm 3. I live in Mozambique. Nothing else.
One of my most favourite stories in the Bible is found in the book of Acts, in chapter 10 and 11. It's the story of a Roman centurion called Cornelius. Cornelius and his family are God-fearers, and they live lives orientated towards the God of Israel. They pray to him and they give alms to the poor. But they're not Jewish, they're Gentiles. Cornelius belongs to the Italian regiment, and most likely he's from Italy. Ethnically and religiously, he belongs to Rome. And yet in the story, as he encounters a follower of Jesus, Peter the Apostle, he receives the gift of the Holy Spirit and is baptized. His whole family and household is. As this unfolds, you may expect that Cornelius will become circumcised as a sign of his new faith in Jesus, the risen Messiah. You might even expect that he would now convert to Judaism, or at least this new sect. And yet he doesn't. He remains a Roman, but now an altogether new kind of Roman, a Roman follower of Jesus. In chapter 11, it appears that the news of this encounter has made it back to the church in Jerusalem, and Peter returns there to give an account. His response is profound. He says, "If then God gave the same gift to them as he gave to us when we believed in the Lord Jesus Christ, who was I that I could stand in God's way?" Peter knew that this wasn't business as usual. He knew that something radical had taken place. And yet he knew that God was the instigator of it all, rather than stand in God's way and put a stop to it. He chose to walk obediently in step with God and his mission to the ends of the earth. Among the Yao, men and women are encountering the risen Messiah, and their lives are being transformed. They remain ethnically and religiously Yao, but like Cornelius and his household, they are becoming an altogether new kind of Yao, Yao followers of Jesus. Please pray with us that, like Peter, we would keep in step with Jesus, others, and God's mission to the ends of the earth.
While we've been connecting with churches throughout the state and beyond, we've been so encouraged by people's support and commitment to share the good news of Jesus amongst the Yao. Be encouraged, God is at work. Thank you for partnering with us.
All right, so hope you enjoyed the video, seeing a little bit more from Ben and his wife Sam. So we're going to go to some social media questions now. One question which I was actually thinking about is that you're a bit of an F1 fan, and you're a fair bit like Daniel Ricciardo in a lot of ways. I think you both grew up in Perth, and you both moved over internationally for the big bucks, and both have a house in Monaco. Would you? Would you say that you're a fair bit like Daniel Ricciardo? Or?
I think that's probably where the similarities end.
Yeah. All right. No, so we've got a question from Francis. So, where did the point of inspiration and faith come for this journey?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Look, it comes. It's coming. It's happening over time. Initially, I can point to a small group meeting, I think it was a combined young adults meeting, and you were probably at that, Daz.
I think so, yeah.
We were at, I don't know, the Wishaw's house or someone's house from Lakeside. It was a combined group. I was actually doing some FIFO work at the time, so I'd just flown back from up north, come along, and there was a guy, John Wilmot, and he was a missionary with Global Interaction in Malawi, and it was on home assignment, a bit like I am now, and was speaking to the young adults about authentic Christianity and what it meant to actually live lives authentically for Christ. And something happened in that meeting, and I sort of remember it as being almost like a punch in the back to say, you need to go and speak to John, and I want you to go to Malawi. Now, unfortunately, I had to look at Malawi on the map when I got home because I knew nothing about mission or anything, what I was doing. And unfortunately, Malawi wasn't Maui in Hawaii. It was this country in Africa. But anyway, that was sort of the initial prompting, calling to go to mission. And I think probably it would be fair to say on our team, perhaps all of the guys and all of the families have had similar experiences that they can point to and go, this was the moment when I felt a call to cross-cultural mission. That said, I think it comes as part of a much wider call to be witnesses of Christ in our society, in our wherever we are. And so I think within that, to go out as God goes out, as God reaches to us, we also then need to reach to others and share the good news with others. So I think that's the big call and the big inspiration, what Christ has done and what God is doing. That's the first call. And then specifically there was a call that I felt back in 2005, which is a little scary, back in 2005, which sort of began that journey. And I think over time there's been a sort of confirmation or a recalling as time has progressed. And I've quite happily can sit here 15 years on and say, that call is still as strong as it was then.
Would you say that you can see it when you chat with the other cross-cultural workers in Africa and abroad? Would you say there's a common theme that a lot of people, they get a very specific push from God towards it, or it's kind of something that people always knew, or they always kind of had a heart for mission, or someone always grew up just thinking that they were going to be a missionary, or is there a common theme with how people ended up overseas? Or?
Yeah, look, I think it's all of those things. Even talking with Sam, she can remember right back, growing up, she was very much reading missionary biographies and had a heart for mission right the way through her youth. Some of us had to sort of be punched in the back for that spark to be lit. But I think there is a strong sense for anyone that I've come in contact with that there's been some sort of specific call or inspiration or whatever to go. And I know it sounds a little bit cliche, but sometimes that call is the only thing that keeps you in a place, because it gets really tough.
For sure.
But if you know that God has called you to that place, somehow through the power of the Spirit, you're enabled to be there. I don't know how it works. But that's the experience that people would share.
Cool. Go to another question now. I don't have the questions. I'll go. Oh, there we go. I've got a question from Sarah. How can we pray specifically for your kids? Sarah could potentially be a children's pastor or something like that, maybe.
Look. Either way, that's a very good question. God bless our kids, and they get dragged all over the place. They sort of have grown up into this, and so I think one of the things that we can be praying for the kids particularly is just their resilience, their well-being, in it all. They're doing really, really good.
Yeah, cool.
Transition. I might be having a meltdown and going, this is all too hard, and the kids are just, they're just plugging away. They're superstars. So, yeah, I think just a praise point, even looking back when Sam and I got quite sick health-wise in 2018, somehow the kids were spared from all that.
Yeah.
And so I think God is really watching over our kids. And even this last term, there's not really been any sickness that they had. A 24-hour bug or something is the worst. So I think God's been, protecting them, watching over them.
Yeah,
so, I think the prayer would be to keep watching over them, keep preparing, keep protecting them. But I think as well that that they would sort of grow and flourish. They would have, they wouldn't be sort of damaged from cross-cultural mission, but that it would become them and they would thrive in that situation.
There must be always be a little bit of fear that they'll be those kind of strange missionary kids and try and get back into Western society and struggle and that kind of thing. But
I mean, even with school, we've got the kids enrolled in a just a government school down the road from us.
Yeah.
And they're just doing so well. And we just, we sit back and look at them when they come home and they tell us all their stories from the day.
Yeah.
And you're like, I didn't expect it was going to be like this. I thought the transition was going to be terrible.
Yeah.
And somehow it's not. They love it. So, I think God's in it somehow.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Next question from Janine. When doing mission life, what is it that has been unexpected?
That's a good question. I think, I can say that COVID-19 has been pretty unexpected.
Yeah.
We live lives that are very unscripted. You have a script, but like as soon as you open the front door and step out of the house, the script, gets thrown out the window. And so, like, we kind of live in this space where we're always on. We're always engaged. We're always looking, left, right, something's going to happen.
Yep.
And so when we came back to Australia, we thought, yes, you beauty, life is going to be straightforward.
Yeah.
We're going to go and speak at our churches. We're going to go and visit our small groups. The kids are going to do school. I'm going to do a bit of study. We're going to have these days where I do some work, where Sam does some work, and then all of a sudden COVID happens and life gets stopped, basically. And so I think in terms of like concretely in the here and now, the unexpected thing was COVID-19 and going, hang on, this is Australia. This is not where chaos and, throwing the script away is meant to happen. Everything's meant to work perfectly.
Yeah.
So I think, perhaps one of the things that I'm learning is it doesn't matter where you are in the world, things happen.
Yeah.
And so it's just it's reminding yourself that we need to be handing over control all the time to God. And yeah,
sure. Next question is from someone called Tilly, and she says, "Hi, Uncle Daz." So I'm assuming that because it's a bit like telethon, the kids are allowed to stay up to watch Ben Good speak tonight. So
lucky them.
You've got
kids
watching in the audience as well. Next question from someone called Anthony. What has God been teaching you over the past year?
Yeah, God has been teaching me a lot, actually. I think the biggest one, and it's kind of the most surprising one, but it shouldn't be. It should be the most obvious one, is that when people encounter God, through the scriptures, for instance, things happen.
Yeah.
And I kind of, we go to training courses, and training courses are really good. They're really important. But you sort of can maybe come away with this sense that you have, you learn a formula. And if you get that formula right, God's going to work. And over this last year, particularly as I sit down with groups of guys, and basically all we do is we open up the Bible and read stories from it, or read the story of the Bible. Somehow, God speaks to people, and people's lives begin to be transformed.
Yeah.
And the thing that I guess I've been learning is that in my mind, perhaps that can seem a little too elementary or a little too basic entry-level missionary. We should be operating at super missionary level where we do all kinds of fancy things. And God says no. Like, just let people encounter me through the scriptures, through a life lived out, as we do life.
Yep.
And I will do the rest.
Yeah.
And that's what across the team, I think we've been really surprised at just how simple it all has to be in order for God to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just have to obey the calling to go and let God do the rest. 'Cause I'm sure
I mean, having said that, it's taken me a long time to get to a place where I can say that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's perhaps part of it anyway.
Yeah. I'm sure that when you went over there straight out of high school and that you weren't massively theologically trained and read a million books on how to evangelize and everything. So.
Yeah, no, but then I thought that I knew it all.
Yeah.
I had all the answers then, whereas now
Yeah.
I don't know if I do. All I know is that, present the scriptures, read the scriptures with people, sit down and tell stories, and God does something. Yeah.
Awesome. So Global Interaction's mission statement is empowering communities to develop their own distinctive ways of following Jesus. Can you just unpack this for us a bit?
Sure. This mission statement, a lot of people just, it's something you put on a cup or a promo mug or something. If I was going to get a tattoo, I would get this tattooed on my arm, I think.
Yeah.
I live and breathe this mission statement, and as a team, this is the mission statement that we live and breathe. Basically, I think at the heart of this mission statement is the acknowledgement that God works in many different ways, and people can respond to God in many different ways. And so it basically says, look, there's no one way that someone follows Jesus. Christianity is deeply embedded in cultures all around the world and societies and places all around the world. And it looks different in all of those places. So there's elements of Christianity, of faith in Jesus that look the same. So that would be, where, aspects like the scriptures, reliance on the scriptures and acknowledgement of what the scriptures are. Things like baptism perhaps, of, the Lord's Supper. There's elements that transcend. But then there's other elements that are deeply rooted in a culture or in a society. And so it's pretty clear, here in Australia, we don't do things exactly like churches in the US do them.
Sure.
Or churches in Asia. And so I guess at our core, we're trying to draw out or ask the question, what does it mean to follow Jesus as a Yao person in Mozambique or as a Yao person in Malawi? And trying to encourage people to discover their ways of responding. So sitting down in groups, opening the scriptures up and going, this is how God is being revealed to us now. We need to respond in this way. I think as well with that question, with that statement, there's an acknowledgement that that Christianity, at least in Mozambique, in our part of the world, is tied very heavily to cultures, specific cultures. And so you can almost tell with different people, say if I'm in Lashinga and someone comes up to me and says, I'm a Nyanja person, so someone from the Nyanja tribe, you can almost work out who or what characteristics make up that person. So a Nyanja person is generally an Anglican person. They speak Chinyanja, which is the language of the Nyanja people. You can almost perhaps pinpoint the region of the country that they come from. And so religion, the title, so Christianity, for instance, is tied to a tribe. And so I think the idea of the gospel, the heart of the gospel, is a sense that you don't need to become something you're not in order to hear the good news of Jesus. You don't need to become an American or an Asian to hear the good news of Jesus. God wants to meet you where you are. And I think that's the thing for our Yao friends, is we're saying, hang on, you don't need to become a Nyanja person in order to become a Christian. You should be a Yao person, and you should be able to encounter Jesus as a Yao person and respond to Jesus as a Yao person. And so that's kind of I mean, you could talk for a long time about what that mission statement means, but they're two key things, I think, for us. Yeah.
And you're also very careful to be non-offensive towards the culture that you live in. I understand whether you might wear clothes that are slightly different to what you'd wear here, or your wife might wear clothes that are slightly different to what she'd wear here, so that you're included in their culture and not trying to stand out as this kind of know-it-all missionary who's come in from a superior country to tell them
how it's done. Yeah. Yeah, look, I think I'm shocking with Bible references, so I'm not even going to try and work out where it's from. But it's Paul talks about taking away stumbling blocks, and then goes on to say, well, not goes on to say, in a different part, talks about Jesus as being the stumbling block, both to the Jews and the Gentiles. Yeah. And I think so often we can put so many stumbling blocks in the way before people actually get to Jesus that they turn around and give up before they have the opportunity to hear. And so we're trying our best to minimize. We're not going to get rid of every stumbling block that we bring. But we want to try and minimize as many stumbling blocks as possible so that people have the opportunity to trip over Jesus, in a sense, to actually encounter Jesus and decide hearing about Jesus as opposed to all these other things that may be seen as offensive or not, so that they can encounter Jesus. And so, for instance, we discuss that this is an ongoing discussion as a team. What are the things we're doing? What are the things we should be doing, shouldn't be doing, in order to limit those stumbling blocks? So, for instance, we don't drink alcohol and we don't eat pork in Mozambique or Malawi.
Yeah, sure.
And that's because if we did, we would be we would be put in a box. Okay, you're Christians.
Yep.
You do this, this, and this, and this. And we want to say no. We're believers in Jesus, but that doesn't mean this and this and this. That doesn't mean we drink alcohol and eat pork. Yeah. Let me tell you about Jesus. And so it's kind of reducing those barriers so that people have an opportunity to encounter Jesus. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I've heard a pastor say that it's not Jesus that people have a problem with. It's everything else. It's the church, and it's the culture, that people generally are very responsive to Jesus. They don't have a problem with Jesus. It's us that's the kind of the problem, and we can cause people to stumble, like you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think our friends, there's certain things that we get hung up on. Oh, we should be doing this, we shouldn't be doing this. And to our friends, they go, that's completely not even on the radar. Why are you bothering with it? And other things we sometimes are oblivious to, they're going, come on, you should be doing this. Like, if you want to be a part of our society, you should be doing these things. So it's kind of a both and ongoing process of just trying to live in a place respectfully.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the next question, do you enjoy or see value in Australian churches sending groups out to visit, or is it an inconvenience and their money would be better off just going straight to you to support your ministry and everyone stays at home?
Can I choose both? No. No, look, it's a huge blessing. It's a huge blessing. And we went through a phase where it was quite quiet. And when we got, the first team for a year or something like that, it was like everyone was just super, super excited, super, super grateful. So I think on a personal level, it's a really good thing. And we're very happy to welcome teams. I think as well, we all, in all of our journeys on Team Yao, there's been a short-term trip involved.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of their worth, it's hard to say that none of us would be there if we didn't go on a trip, but we all went on a trip and we're all in on field. So I think they're really important. Yeah. That's one element of why they're important. The other element is it closes the gap between the sending churches and us on the field. A lot of the times, out of sight, out of mind, we sort of are perhaps, not thinking about what's happening in Australia. Australia is, this is happening at the moment, and we're not necessarily thinking about what is happening in Mozambique or Malawi. When a team comes out, it kind of like closes that gap right down, and all of a sudden, we're sort of involved in, you know, Lakeside's life,
Yeah.
and Lakeside is involved directly in our lives, and sort of it just heightens or builds that relationship, that partnership, which is really what it's all about.
Mm.
And I think perhaps you can speak into this as well.
Mm.
It changes people. Like a
Yeah.
short-term trip, an experience that, you know, is perspective widening,
Yep.
changes people's lives. And
Mm.
so I think there's an added benefit, not just for us on the field, but also for the church as well, that you've got people who are more engaged and active back here as well. So,
Yeah.
keep coming,
Yeah.
basically.
Absolutely, no. Agree with that from my perspective of going over to Africa a couple of times. It is one that I think you do have to be careful that you're not just trying to, again, go over there with a big team of Westerners. We'll show you how to do everything. We'll come and do all these building projects and things the right way, and your way is not right. But at the same time, if I didn't spend that money all those years ago to go over on a trip, then my understanding of mission, my passion for mission, even it stems towards poverty and all of that. Just whenever that comes up, I might be able to encourage other people in advocacy and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Trying to just have that picture in your head that you might not, when you've been there and you've seen it and you've smelt it and you've experienced it, that passion is just real, and then you might end up doubling or tripling or whatever you spent on income that might come in from donations later, or even just people who might end up going over there and then come back and might have a real passion for mission and might end up over there long term like yourself. So.
Yeah.
So from Sally, long time listener, first time writer, wondering who is yours and Sam's favourite teammate?
Well, that sounds like a bit of a loaded question. If it's from Sally herself, Sally could quite possibly be a team member. We don't have favourites.
Yeah.
No, it's you, Sally. No.
So what do you say to someone who says that there's so many people in our own country and state who don't know Jesus? Why do you have to go to another country to tell other people about Jesus?
Yeah, it's another one of those both and questions. There is lots and lots of people who don't know Jesus in Australia. And I think that's really important to address. I think so that's that's what I would say. But yes, there is that. That is true. Another aspect to the question is sort of talking about there's an inequality, I guess. Here churches have a lot of resources. There's a number of churches, and there's people that there's a lot of people, a lot of Christians in this country, and so I think Christians should be out sharing the good news of Jesus. In terms of percentage of money or resources or people going to least reached people, so people that have the least opportunity to hear about Jesus. In terms of resources, money, all of that, the percentage of that, the percentage of spending, for instance, of churches globally, is super, super low. I don't know if it's like 3% or less than 3%, and 90% is spent on resources here in Australia. So I think it's a both and question. We need to be doing the work here, but also we need to be sending people to places that don't have an opportunity to hear the good news, or at least partnering with churches in those places to empower them to be doing that work as well. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
it's such a one body, many parts. Everyone has different gifts and and callings, and it doesn't mean that your calling is more special or less special than anyone else.
And even if people, there's sort of talk now about local mission, and churches being involved in local mission here, and I think that's great. And I think we're all doing local mission. In Mozambique, we're sort of doing what's being done here. but just with a different postcode.
Mm.
So I want to say that each postcode is important,
Mm.
and if it is important, then we should have representatives, in a sense,
Yeah.
in those places. Yeah.
I think even when you look at the first missionaries of Jesus' disciples, even Paul and Barnabas were kind of set apart to go the more broadly broadly travelling, and some of the other disciples may have stayed closer to home with their
Yeah.
evangelism. So it's even
Yeah.
right from those early days, there are
Yeah.
some people who have
Yeah.
that calling, and
Yeah, and
some
I think
who
the
don't.
challenge is not to place one, cross-cultural mission overseas is much more
Yeah.
important than mission at home. No, everywhere is important to
Yeah.
God, everyone as well.
Yeah. The next question about how God was calling you to be a cross-cultural worker, I think we covered that already, or did you have anything you wanted to add to that? Or?
No, look, I think
No.
yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
No worries. So you speak about Global Interactions mission statement. So would you be comfortable going into a mosque with your Muslim friends but still praying to Jesus?
Yeah, look, we could, how long do we have? Because- no, look, I think
19 minutes.
there's a few elements to that question. And I think context is really important and motivation is really important. And so I would want to ask why. Why do you want to do that? And look, I've done it. I've gone to a mosque with a Muslim friend, and I've gone through the motions, but I've prayed to Jesus. But that's not I wouldn't set that as a rule. So sometimes I've done that,
Yeah.
but other times I haven't done that because it's been the wrong motivation, or it's been the wrong timing, or whatever. And partly the question is as well, how are people going to perceive you?
Yeah.
So you don't want to sort of go in there and people to go, oh, look, Ben's become a Muslim.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
At the same time, so I think it's one that always needs lots of discussion, lots of prayer. I think part of the question, or part of what gets me thinking about that question, is a sense that there's no place that is off limits to God. Like there's no God-forsaken place in this world. And so there's an acknowledgement that God is at work in places that we wouldn't usually go into. But that doesn't mean that, I guess I'm coming back to, again, perhaps a Philippians thing where it says, we've got freedom in a sense to do anything, but not anything is beneficial.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's that struggle between what am I trying to do here, and is it actually beneficial to the cause, in a sense. And so look, if you're going in there to want to understand a little bit more what your friends are doing, like how do they worship God, then I think that's a good enough reason to go in and have a look. But if you're trying to, I guess, pretend that you're something you're not, then I would say, hang on, maybe just wait.
Yeah.
So it's not an easy question to answer,
Yeah.
and it's very case specific.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would say, look, don't shy away from it. Don't make a rule that no, you can't do it. I would say, pray about it.
Yeah.
Talk to people about it.
Mm-hmm.
Have a discussion and ask those sort of questions.
Yeah. Because you might also say that you shouldn't sit down and have dinner with prostitutes and tax collectors as well, but
yeah,
we all know that's not such a bad thing.
Yeah.
A question from Rob. My parents often said doors never opened for sharing the gospel like they did when we had our young children to break down barriers.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's true. I mean, sometimes. So Finley, he's in kindergarten now. So when we go back, he will be in school. But when he wasn't, sometimes I would take him out with me. And yeah, look, in terms of breaking down barriers, who doesn't like to see a kid, And so at the marketplace, where I meet regularly with a group of guys, and we sort of sit down and pray together and sort of read the scriptures together. Occasionally, I would bring Finney along, and he would get picked up by these guys, and they'd walk him around, and I agree, 100%.
Yep.
Yep.
From Dixie, can you please say a verse in the language you were being nurtured in? So you actually speak 2 languages, don't you?
Yeah, I do. Yes. Can I use my phone? Can I cheat and use my phone? Is that?
Sure. I think Dixie will allow it. We'll have to check.
We'll have to check. Okay. Oh, look. Yes, I can. And sure, I'll do that. Oh, except I don't have my phone. Sorry. I will put a verse up. I don't know. Not now. Yes.
Yep.
Yes, but no.
No worries.
I can say hello.
What are the two languages that you speak?
So Chiao, which is the tribal language,
Yep.
the language of the Yao people, and then Portuguese, which is sort of the official language of the country. Yeah. So I could look in terms of word choices and things like that. You know, in Portuguese you would say Jesus Cristo, which is Jesus Christ, and in Chiao you would say Isa al Messiah. And so, you know, terminology is important given your context. If you talk about Jesus Cristo with my Yao Muslim friends, they sort of think you're talking about some foreign entity, some foreign god.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're talking about Isa al Messiah, okay, all of a sudden you're speaking my language and I know who you're talking about. So yeah. Sorry, it's a bit of a cop-out, but...
Another question from Rachel. What do you think the people perceive your purpose is for being there?
Yeah.
So I guess, is there a little bit of... people are a bit suspicious about you, or when you first arrive maybe?
Yeah, look, I think, and they have every right to be suspicious, you know, where they're strangers in their country. And particularly in the early days, I think they have every right to be suspicious.
Yeah.
That being said, one of the great experiences, the great memories I have of this last term is being asked that question, what are you doing here? And I sort of thought, well, I'm going to answer this as honestly and as truthfully as I can. And I said, look, I'm a person of God that wants to share the stories of Jesus with people.
Yeah.
And the guys, this is sort of the birth of the group that I meet with at the marketplace. And they said, don't come back until you bring those stories. So I think if we can, you know, hold off answering that question while we're perhaps not able to speak the language and not able to understand the context, but, you know, as soon as possible, you want to be able to say to people, you know, this is who I am, this is why I'm here. And we might be surprised that they actually want to hear more.
Yeah.
Okay, if you're telling stories about Jesus, we want to hear them.
Yeah.
You know, that's a great... that's, I guess, the ideal scenario.
Yeah. And you've been fairly welcomed into that community now, haven't you? You've been to some pretty special, significant occasions, and you're one of the kind of Chiao people.
Yeah, look, so I think I guess we have talk in our cross-cultural, you know, with the training and things like that. People say we need to be striving for an accepted outsider. So we're never going to be an insider. We're never going to be a Yao person. But if we can be accepted as an outsider, that's really good. So yeah, look, we've been, and Global Interaction has had a long history in both Malawi and Mozambique, and so through the relationships and the experiences, or through the sort of hard work of others, we've, you know, as newbies have been able to tap into those relationships and continue them on and be welcomed in that way. So that's been really good.
Yeah, cool. And finally, how can people stay in contact with you if people want to be able to catch up with you, follow your news and what's going on in the life of the Good family?
Yeah, so we're trying our best to communicate and to engage with people, and so there's two primary ways of doing that. And the first way is to use Discord is an app that we've started using, which works really well. It's a gaming app. Don't let that put you off. But it's a really good opportunity. It's a really good app for us to use. So Discord, hopefully there's a link that you can see for Discord. If you go onto that site, that's our sort of server. That's our place where we update people with sort of weekly updates. We at least, you know, send a picture in, or, you know, perhaps we're going to go into a group gathering where we're going to read a particular passage. So we'll say, look, pray for us, or you know, post the meeting. We had a really good time. Thanks for your prayers. That sort of thing. So it's more of a less polished but more regular form of communication. And then apart from that, we've got sort of bi-monthly, tri-monthly. Is that sort of quarterly newsletter that we send out, and there's a link to a subscription page and you go onto that page, you'll be added to the mailing list, and the next newsletter that comes out, you'll get that link.
Yep.
You'll get that email.
Yep.
So
I'm sure we'll have the links somewhere on the on the Facebook page, so people can click on that and subscribe to your mailing list.
Yeah. Yep.
I think that's all of our questions. Was there anything else that you wanted to say to people?
Yeah.
or?
Look, I want to say a huge thank you to Lakeside. Lakeside, as I said, I was a young adult going to a small group to hear a missionary, and this is where it all began for me. So, I want to thank Lakeside for, and not just for me, from, my teammates, the Falconers, they've got a strong relationship with this church. Yep. The Cranes as well. People like Lakeside's had a very strong connection with Global Interaction and with the work in Mozambique and Malawi for a long time. Yep. And so I just want to say a huge thank you for your partnership, for your relationship, for your prayers, your support, for just being with us on this journey of seeing God at work in Mozambique and Malawi. And the really exciting thing is it's paying off. God is at work. We are seeing people come to faith in Jesus.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think that'll do it. So just thanks a lot for coming here and sharing with us, and really appreciate you giving up your time for Lakeside. And it is great for us as a church that's been supporting a few of the Global Interaction missionaries for quite a few years, and you and your family, and we see your videos every year, and just being able to see what the money that people give in the Beyond the Gate goes to a real person, a real family who is
it's for the penthouse suite.
For the penthouse suite in Monaco. Next to Daniel Ricciardo. And there are people in Mozambique who are coming to know Jesus, and it's all of us that are contributing. It's us at Lakeside contributing with our finances. It's you on the ground doing your part, and together we can do great things for God's kingdom. So thanks a lot for your time.
Thanks, Des.
And thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see most people on Sunday morning for church at 9:30. Good night.